I've just been thinking about the language of thought hypothesis, largely because it's I subscribe to the RSS feed from, I think it's the Stanford psychology or philosophy or something, I don't know, some site, but it comes up on my Google page, these various entries from the Dictionary of Philosophy, or Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and a few days ago it was that one, it was the language of thought hypothesis, which is really interesting. I mean, from what I remember, and I honestly don't remember that much, but from what I've kind of extrapolated from it, it's broadly understanding thought as a kind of computational activity with the vocabulary as that and symbol manipulation in the way that language is symbol manipulation. With thought having a certain kind of computational symbol manipulation process going on. So I guess that's associated with somebody like Chomsky, because he was a linguist, an anarchist, but as a linguist at least, he had this idea of deep grammar, which is this, as I say, it's a language that the brain thinks in, and then there's various transformational processes take place to turn the deep grammar of thought into the various spoken languages and expressive languages that people use to put those thoughts across. So the fact that we all speak in different languages, or many of us do, isn't reflective of a difference in our thinking. We all think the same with the same deep grammar, according to Chomsky, but we have different kind of transformational processes going on. Okay. Yeah, Steven Pinker talks about this. He's kind of a neo-Chomskyite. I think he refers to it as mental ease, that we're all thinking in this language of mental ease. And again, just different cultural interpretations of that, put different spins on it, so arrange the words in different orders or put different sounds to a particular concept so they appear as different words in different languages. Okay, so that's the language of thought hypothesis, kind of. But what it put me in mind of is what its competitor theory is, and the competitor theory that I know most about, at least, is to do with embodiment and embodied linguistics and embodied cognition more generally. And what that idea says is that thinking, is Compost this way. Thinking comes out of the body, really, and is kind of repurposings of bodily actions, through processes like metaphor or through processes like metonymy, that we use the same circuits that we use to move our bodies around, or to look at things, or to smell things, or to taste things. All of the concrete experience of having a body, all those circuits in the brain are repurposed for thinking or movement. I mean, Rudolfo Linas says that all thinking is internalized motion, internalized movement, which is, a very astute thing to say, I think. And as I say, those two theories, the theory of embodied cognition and then the theory of language of thought, are usually seen as competitors. But I'm just wondering if that's necessarily the case, really. What would it be? How would it function if the language of thought, if the components of the language of thought was the experiences and the actions of the body? So if the vocabulary of that language was the vocabularies that you find in descriptions of what the body does. So it's all things like push, pull, force, motion, high, low, in, out. All of the kind of Newtonian world that we move around in forms the basis for a vocabulary, and the grammar indeed, for the language of thought. And also not just the motion, but also the senses. So the particular logic that accompanies vision, with things like perspectivalism, or things like, all the stuff that accompanies vision, really, form the rules for a certain kind of grammar that exists within thinking. You know what I mean? So we use the rules of the kind of rules of physics, if you like, that our seeing utilises, and we repurpose that as thinking rules, so they become grammatical rules. And similarly with all the rest of the senses. So these image schemas I've talked about before. This is, Mark Johnson's written quite a lot about image schema, but other people as well. This relatively small series of descriptions of what the body does and what kinds of experiences it has. Just a couple of hundred different things. It seems to me that would be a good candidate for a vocabulary and a grammar of thought, but repurposed into conceptual form. I mean, what you'd need to do, I suppose, if you were really going to turn that into a computational language, so you could perform all the symbol manipulations that are necessary for a full language of thought hypothesis that you find in Chomsky and people like that. What you'd need to do is you'd need to kind of do the math on it, really. You'd need to look at all those different image schema, things like force and source path goals and all containment, all of the rest of the schemas that we're familiar with that organise our experience. And you'd need to analyse each of those in terms of what the contents were, the key players, the component parts, but also the kinds of logic that fit them together, and turn those into a grammar. Which in a way you kind of do. It hasn't been done as a grammar, I don't think, but something like boundary maths, or the laws of form that George Spencer Brown wrote about. I mean, in a way, the laws of form is a kind of extended analysis of the image schema of containment, in a way. It's a mathematical process, technique, I don't know what you call it, paradigm, model, way of doing maths, which starts from very simple principles, first principles, but those principles are to a large extent containment, or at least distinction. The idea that you can divide something into parts, so it's a kind of part wholes distinction maybe, or as I say, containment is probably better. So I think if you were to analyse all the different components, like all the different image schema, containment, yes, like you do in finding boundary maths or the laws of form, but also the other image schema, then I think you might have the working components then for a proper language of thought. And if you were somehow able to reconcile the different kinds of physics, or the different physical, I'm sure you could, the different physical properties that exist within those different schema, like the physics of containers, or the logic of a container, and combine that with the logic of a path and a goal at the end of a path, or the logic of a force. Yeah, I think that would give you a grammar, I think, which I think would be a good candidate for mental ease. I don't think this has been a very coherent video. Still, I'll think about it some more, see if I can get it down to a simpler way of saying the same thing. Lovely day today. I'm in Cheshire, look. Those trees. Look at the sunlight. I'm going to point this time at the sun, actually. In one of my comments, someone said that looking at a video of the sun is as damaging as looking at the sun itself. I don't really believe that. I don't think you can go blind looking at a video of the sun. Anyway, if you look at this video now and you're blind, please accept my humble apologies.